start
You've
Huh?
had 5 months.
I know, but now I'm trying to realize. Wait, how do I how do I bring it up? How do you bring up the
I'll bring it up for you in the intro. Don't worry, I got you.
Oh, let's see how it goes. Send it.
Okay.
Send it.
I realize it's still May, but June's right around the corner here of when we come out. These episodes are gonna be the last 2 weeks of May. And I'll say a couple things before we get started here, and Aaron's leading the conversation. One, after you watch part 1 or part 2 or both, if you wanna have a more one-on-one conversation with me and you know me personally, feel free to reach out. Let's have that conversation. Don't feel like, "Oh, I can't have that conversation. We can't talk about that." That's why we're talking about this here to begin with, okay? This is something I talked to Aaron about, prepared him a little bit back in January. Be like, "Hey, June's coming up. This happens every June. Let's talk about this. This isn't for personal clout, for personal anything else. It's more along the lines of, hey, this is reality." And I asked Aaron to lead the conversation, and he graciously agreed to lead this conversation. He may feel a little nervous about it. He may not know how to start things off, but that's okay. That being said, if you are happening to listen to this with children in the room, my recommendation maybe is listen to it first on your own and then decide if it's appropriate to bring children in on this conversation. It's not appropriate for every age, obviously. That's why there's a big battle controversy ruling in our schools right now about things like this. So use wisdom and discernment. This is really intended for adults, in all honesty. But like I said, if you know me personally, and if you know me personally, you probably have my phone number. Reach out. If you want to have a further conversation or you have questions, or even if you have disagreements, that's fine. I think we can have a conversation about this. And I think it could be good. That being said, we all know June is Pride Month. Okay. And for those of you who are knowing me, you're probably going like, what the heck is going on? You're like, no. And I asked Aaron to lead a conversation or ask the questions that maybe he's wanted to ask or just wants to ask in general. Because as Aaron's known, as a couple other guys have known that I've been close to for what? A while now. You guys have known this about me, right? A while.
Yeah, well, cause yeah, I would say so. Cause
Okay.
even when like the last time we had talked about it, it was like I already had thought to some degree you pretty much already told me some time beforehand. So I was like, wait a minute, I was like, why did you not think I didn't know this? But then at the same time, I was like, oh, maybe you just never really I guess no, we're never like just like straight out about it. Just I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. It's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So Aaron's probably been one of the guys that's known probably the longest. Um, Josh and Andy, probably second longest in those phrases.
I was gonna be like, who's Josh?
Who's Josh?
Whoops.
Yeah, whoops. Um, those are probably the 2 that I've known second longest in regards to
Mm,
everything as well. And so let's just get on with it here. My name is Paul. I'm a same-sex attracted Christian male.
mm.
I do not affirm gay marriage. I do not affirm gay relationships. And let's get on with the conversation. Aaron, off to you.
Well, you already answered some of my questions. So that's good. No, man, yeah, that was wow, that was lot more than I thought the intro was gonna be. No, yeah, I was looking back at it. I mean, I thought it was the one time we went to lacrosse. I mean, how long ago was that
It
though?
was a couple of years ago, and I told you I had at that point, when I told you about that, I told you I had struggled with it in the past. I tried to make it in the past. I didn't say I was
Mhm.
still fully engaged
I
with
guess
it,
with
or,
it.
it might have been still a part of, what I was
Uh-huh.
going through, but it wasn't the full, "This is what I'm doing," the
Right.
issue with. I was
Right.
still trying to at that time when we went to lacrosse,
Yeah.
I was still trying this sounds horrible, in all honesty, I probably owe a couple women some, apologies. Uh,
Saying that is that I'm guessing for where you're going, that's kind of part of, like, one of my questions, kind of, like, in here. Because like, I guess my first question was gonna be, I was like, for you, I guess I don't know, like, I guess did well, like, I guess when did it start, I guess, for you? I guess it
okay.
was my kinda like my question where it's like, where did I guess is you hear some people and say, like you were born this way sort of thing. Like you were born out the bat, like just naturally always had that, I guess, that attraction. Or was it something that developed later on in life? And I guess if obviously however far you kind of want to go into that,
Alright,
it's just yeah,
let's break down that question first, okay?
yeah,
Because that one might be a little longer one here.
for sure.
Um, yeah, that's an interesting question. People will always go, "Are you born?" Because that's a question that's being asked all the time.
Oh,
Are
100%.
people just born that way? Are they made that way? Blah, 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 blah. I am not of the full I'm not fully convinced that you're born gay,
Mhm.
straight, or gay or lesbian or whatever,
Mhm.
bisexual. Um, Now there's been some research that's been done. A person that, if you're interested in more in this, Christopher Yuan, great guy
Mm.
to go and listen to. I know I've mentioned him before. So
Yes.
if any of you have been paying attention and putting together pieces, besides Aaron here,
Everything's been
all of a sudden
boom.
you're like, wait, Chris, oh, anyways, so he doesn't have a PhD in genetics or anything. So take this with a grain of salt. He did his own research on things, and reading the other studies out there. Because at one point, Time magazine actually put out, a magazine said, "We found the gay gene. We found the gene
Yeah,
that makes people gay." Well,
yeah,
when you actually study it, no,
they didn't.
it doesn't.
Mm,
And even when you have like twins born with the same genetic code that have this gay gene, it's not a guarantee that both of them will be gay. It's not even it most of the time, maybe one is, when the other isn't, and they're
mm,
raised in the same environment, same genetics.
right,
What becomes the differentiator? It's things they do on their own, things they're exposed to, things that are
right,
gonna be slightly different. So, born that way, I know that's the popular phrase and the trend and the
right.
song and that.
I say that's the Lady Gaga song, "I was
Yeah,
born this way."
I don't believe that, okay?
Yeah.
What I do believe is we are all born sinful. We
Mm,
we're all born that way.
mhm.
That is in our spiritual and our genetic code right from the get-go. Thank you, Adam and Eve. Okay?
Got done screwed it up.
That is definitely something that did happen. We are born
Mhm,
that way in that regard. Born gay, bisexual, lesbian. No, I don't think so.
mm,
There are definitely things for me that I think as I look back, I can definitely see shaped some of that. Some of that
mm,
was self-inflicted,
mhm.
my own sin, things I did. Some of that was not self-inflicted. For example, one thing that I remember that still rings really through my memory. I was in 6th grade.
6th grade, okay.
Yeah, yeah, man, going back to middle school, Jersted Middle School.
Jersted.
Yep, here
Hmm,
in, good old
yeah,
Racine,
yeah,
up on the north side,
yep,
okay? Because that's where my family lived, that's where I went to middle school at.
mhm.
It was real close, great. It was science class, 6th grade. I remember this because it was one of the first times I even questioned anything about me. Like, and
Okay,
I'm not saying this is anything that, like, this was a revelation or anything, but,
Mhm.
Got kids, guys, especially at that age, we're
What
jerks.
yes.
There's
Uh-huh. Still are.
uh,
Just
I and I'm using polite language in that
Yes.
because 6th grade
Yeah.
guys are just
We're a special kind of stupid.
yeah, let's go with that. But I remember that class, primarily because I don't you know, I wasn't and still not, one of the very athletic guys. In high school, if you're a guy, you're the athletic, you're the jock,
Yeah.
you're
Big
the
tough
whatever.
dude.
I wasn't that. I
Mm.
was more the science guy. I was more the guy that enjoyed the cooking in that, home ec and that. Because yeah, we had home ec
Nerd.
classes. Y Yeah, see,
Is that is
that's not what they called
that's
me, though.
oh, no. I don't
Yeah.
know if I wanna
So,
know.
it was 6th grade
Oh,
science class.
yeah.
I forgot exactly what led up to it,
Mm.
but I remember it was just a bunch of guys, and they were being dumb, and they're going, "You need to stop." Basically, a bunch of gay slurs at me.
R Just because you weren't the jock dude.
And I
Well, I guess no.
something else might have
Yeah.
been happening in class. I don't remember
Right.
exactly what led up to that, and
Right.
that happened, and I remember that made me it upset me greatly.
Mhm.
I was crying, and I left out in the hallway and that, and,
Yep.
that was one of the first things, and, that kinda stuck around there too. That's why
Yeah.
I said some of the stuff wasn't my sin, some of it
It
was
was others
other other
afflicted onto
things
you.
going against me,
Mhm.
and then as far as my own sin, and I know we talked about this, a few episodes ago, it's like I don't remember exactly how many episodes ago it was, but it was in 2023 where we were talking about it, and the topic came up like, "Oh, yeah, the first time found porn and all that."
Oh, right.
Uh,
Mm.
you know what? For whatever reason, and maybe it was part of that, part of other things, may there's a whole bunch of studies like, oh, people become gay because maybe they don't have a strong male model in their life, maybe this or this or this,
Mhm.
whatever combination it is, I don't know.
Right.
But I'll say this from the get go, the porn I found was probably no, I shouldn't say probably. It was of that gay variety.
Mm. See, um, one of my I was already just thinking in my head, I was like, even, like, as kids, I mean, for me, when I was a little dude, I mean, very curious
Oh yeah.
about things. And, I mean, even like, for me, I think oh, what was it? I mean, when I first started, I guess when I kind of like, yeah, when I was introduced to porn, was at a buddy's house, and that was very uncomfortable. Um, but then obviously having that door open to me, I was like, "Oh, now I know what to look at for on my computer." So then when I started bringing it to my home, I mean, even I guess like for me, actually, I don't know, like yeah, looking back, I mhm, I also did dabble in the gay porn site stuff at one point. I don't know if I guess I don't know how necessarily I came across it,
Mhm.
but like I mean, yeah, being introduced to that at like a young age, I mean, that's definitely
That's
that
gonna
has a effect on you.
that's gonna warp your taste.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and goodness, this is maybe maybe I'm gonna have my own moments right here, right now. Shoot, hot diggity. No, because like that is goodness, yeah. I like looking back at it now. There's definitely some things like I know I've done in my past where it's like looking back, I was like, dude, this is gross. Um,
Mhm.
as far as like, no, it never got to the point of where there's actually like, I guess any like oral or like actual like, well, yeah, no oral or like sort of intercourse happening, as a kid, but like, yeah, oh goodness, I remember, um, being with one friend and obviously being at a dude's house, um, we we had we had gotten done watching some stuff on TV we probably shouldn't have been watching as kids. Well, just in general, and wanted to, I guess, reenact some of it, but we didn't go to this sounds horrible right now.
Yes, it does.
But, like, we wanted there was definitely that wanting to, like, to have that the curiosity of what okay, and it didn't involve, like, yeah, any, like, actual, like, intercourse or any, like, anal sex or any stuff like
Uh-huh.
that. Was more of, like, just, like, the physical hugging and stuff like that, and it got weird quick, and I was like, "Dude, no, uh-uh." So, but, I mean, yeah, I for even for myself, like, there was times where I mean, yeah, I was looking through porn and stuff like that. There was a ton of, like, gay porn, that stuff that came along the way, and it's crazy how just that little bit, like, I guess for me, even, like, it started to warp the mind a little bit.
Yeah, it does.
And now and again, this is where, as you're
And by the way, this is all new to me right now.
No, yeah, this is all new to you. Yeah,
Yeah,
I haven't told any of this to
I'm like
him yet, and now I'm telling the world.
so I'm like, "Okay,
Yeah, how do you take that one? Um, gosh. Uh, but that it's just to me, like, it's crazy what's out there now for kids, and I mean, you wonder why it's such a big thing because it's so available and readily available, and now, like, kinda as you kinda talked about in the intro for, like, our schools and whatnot, it's being like, there's stuff being taught about, all this gender I don't know,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
Yeah,
your
you got
gender identity and drag races and all that."
yeah.
Yeah, it's only gonna get worse,
Mhm.
unfortunately. There's I'm trying to debate how to if I should say this or not because there's a lot
Mhm.
of, yeah, I'm just gonna say it, whatever. Um,
You gave a fair warning to whoever was watching this. If
yeah,
there's anybody that shouldn't be listening to this, turn it off.
turn it off, yeah. So, I'm gonna say my experience based on this, and I'm only gonna be able to extrapolate based on that to current times that it's
Mhm.
probably a lot worse. Okay. So, you know how you're
Yeah.
saying, it's getting worse and that, and
Mhm.
I say that too. The proliferation of porn out there, and all of us have
Our phones,
essentially a phone,
computer in our hands.
a
Yeah.
computer. Kids see it as the social media Pornhub 24/7 access device.
Mhm.
Okay. That's why people are getting so upset that Utah is now it's great. I love it. I actually think it should happen more states. So Utah recently
Oh.
added in the age verification for access to porn, right?
Oh,
And
they d I
yeah, they
oh.
pass it. It's enacted. It's going through, right? So Pornhub
Oh.
in retaliation blocked all of Utah from getting access to Pornhub because
Good.
we can't do this validation, blah blah blah. And
Yeah.
so all these people are getting upset. They're trying to use VPNs to get around the block, all this other stuff. Okay, going on. I'm like, that should be a national wide thing, but that starts eating at my
But the
libertarian side thing, regardless of that
yeah,
fact.
yeah.
So that proliferation, that access to the porn, and as you even said, and again, this is all news to me, so I'm like
Yeah.
a little in shock over here of what's going on. Um, I don't know if you had planned to share that or not, or just
You
decided
know,
to.
kinda, like, came up to my mind as before we started this, I was, like, thinking back, "Man," I was like, "You've dabbled in some weird stuff too, your own." So I was like, "Shoot. Well, now might as well be the time."
Okay. But yeah, so
Yeah.
yeah, the porn deranges, right?
Yes.
We know that, we've seen that in studies and that. We've now starting to see guys who are growing up who have engaged in porn for how decades now, it
Yeah.
seems like. It seems like decades. Whoa, it actually is decades. We're 2023, internet was freely available in 2000. Dial up still, but it was freely available. And we're starting to get DSL that was really starting to be propagated everywhere. So my earlier years of college and that, right? There and I hate to admit this.
Mm,
Um, it's one there's a lot of things I regret in life. There's a lot. This is definitely
yeah.
high on the list.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time in chat rooms,
Oh, okay.
gay
Yeah, and
chat rooms, gay
that's
gay chat rooms, okay?
yeah.
The things that I saw in there
Mm,
would make most people disgusted. Made me disgusted, to be honest.
mhm.
That was part of the thankfully, the thing that got me to start wising up and straightening up and literally.
Yes. Ba-doom-ksh.
Okay,
Pun intended.
but
Wow.
not fully, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
But one of the things that I saw in there that
Mm,
if it was this bad back then, so when I say back then, I'm talking early 2000s.
who knows how
Imagine how much worse
bad.
it is now, where I saw guys, dads bragging about abusing their kids. Kids that were 7, 8, 9 years old.
Mm,
Those kids stand no chance of having a normal, well-adjusted life. We're all concerned over here about drag queens in schools. We're all concerned about teaching gender identity to little Sam or
yeah,
Samantha in 1st and 2nd grade. Yes,
yeah.
police, FBI, you need to investigate those rooms more.
Yeah.
I guarantee you, I guarantee you, if you go into one of those rooms,
Mhm.
you look for certain keywords, and I get and those keywords might have changed over the years. I don't know. Okay. Hopefully they have. I don't know. But if you look at those keywords, and for people who talk around those keywords,
Mm,
those are the people that you got to worry about.
mm.
And you go, well, not everyone. Yes, not everyone. I agree 100%. I'm not saying stigmatize the entire gay community.
Right.
I'm not saying label every gay person a pedophile, but I'm saying it's enough of a problem back then that now it's still an issue. Look what happened recently on Twitter. Someone started posting around
Mm,
the new addition to the LGBT flag,
hmm.
basically saying, "This is the pedophile acceptance flag
Huh.
because it's not bad. It should be accepted." Da da da. People in Minnesota were trying to remove out of the laws that specifically they're removing the pedophile portions from the laws to make them a protected sexual identity. MAP, which we all know, minor attracted person, is trying to be something that is accepted. We're seeing academics now is trying to give lectures and papers saying pedophilia is natural if the child consents. We're talking about a person who can't consent to things like tattoos or body modifications
Well,
outside of gender reassignment surgeries and that.
yeah.
But you can't, uh, they can't sign up for a social media account if under 13. They can't get a piercing under a certain age. They can't get a tattoo under 18, can't drink under 21, can't buy a firearm to 21. They can't do all these things because these are adult things, but yet they somehow can somehow consent
To
to sex with another guy,
yeah.
to changing their gender, to taking hormone blockers. Are you kidding me? And we wonder why it's getting worse. Now, here's the thing, and I want to make this crystal clear. First off, before we go anywhere else,
Mhm,
I believe in the Christian tradition of man, woman, sex,
mhm.
marriage.
Well,
Okay,
marriage,
yeah,
sex.
yeah,
I'm
marriage,
sorry.
sex. I'm just listing all
Yes,
these
no,
other
yeah,
things
I
off. Right.
know.
I
Yeah.
understand that there are going to be people outside the Christian community who are like, well, I'm committed to my same sex partner in a marriage, whatever. This might sound a little weird in the context, but this is what I gotta say. You know, for me, I have to follow what Christ says. For those who aren't Christian, guess what? They don't have to follow what the Bible says.
Correct.
Okay. So I'm not sitting here and going to go off and say, "Oh, you who don't profess to be Christian, you can't be in a marriage." I think that's a whole other conversation. I think most of what I'm talking about is confined to what I believe, which
Mhm.
is Christ, the Bible, Christian, and how all this relates to it. We want to talk about how society relates to it as a whole, outside of these other things like
Mhm.
pedophiles and that. You know, it amazes me when looking on YouTube and all that. People won't even say the p word, porn. They'll say corn because they're afraid of being blocked by YouTube.
Huh, I never knew that.
Oh yeah, it's a big thing. So I'm like, you know what? Screw it. I don't care. We get blocked. We're not monetized anyways right now. Who cares? We're available on Rumble too.
Thanks, YouTube. Yeah.
uh, but so my conversation and my answers, on this outside of those illegal things, which to be honest, guess what? There's a lot of guys who identify as gay who are going to be against that sort of crap too. That's
Right.
that's
Oh,
why there's
100%.
there's that Twitter account. I
Yeah.
don't know if you've seen it, Gays Against Groomers.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so it's a bunch of gay people, non-Christian mostly, who are against, like, the pedophiles, the drag queens in the schools and that. They're
Mhm.
against all that, and they get a lot of hate and blowback
Yeah.
because they're not following the narrative. So I wanted to say that all these
Mm.
answers that I'm giving for you are in that realm of a Christian in the church, not a non-Christian in society, because I think those are 2 different conversations
Mhm.
that need to have for the most part on how a lot of these things relate. Because some of these things, the non-Christians go, "Well, I don't believe in Christ. I don't believe in the Bible." You know what? They're not gonna be under those same rules, those same. This is editor Paul in the future after hearing myself and how I just kind of word saladed that, and I didn't like how I said that in the video. So I decided to insert this little addendum clip here. So what I said in that clip was that, non-Christians are not under the law of that. And while that is technically true, in the end, and I want to this is what I want to add in here, in the end, we're all, whether we believe in God or not, we all will bow and bend the knee to God, to Jesus in the end. And we can't say, "Oh, I didn't know about this law. I didn't know about that." We'll all be judged the same. We'll all be judged under the law. We'll all be judged by God for our sins that we commit. And the difference is that if you're a believer, your name is written in the book of life, and it's a different judgment than if your name is not in the book of life. So when I say we're not, that the non-believers are not under the law in that regard, yes, but I want to add that little distinction in there because as Christians, we are called to follow and live what is in the Bible. We are called to continue to live our faith at all times, to do these things. And I wasn't as clear as I wanted to be during the recording. And I felt it important enough for editor Paul to come in, jump in, and add this clip in. All right, let's get back. Things.
No.
Now, there are some things that we go, well, these are natural things. These are things. Yes, I get it. 100% agree. But guess what? The person who isn't a Christian isn't going to understand that at first. And they're not going to be like, well, these natural laws that you speak of, we need to follow. They're gonna be like, "This is what I want," and that's why there has to be conversations. I think multiple conversations at multiple steps at multiple levels.
Hmm.
There are some things that are universal, and some things are true for someone who's trying to follow God properly. I think that's
Okay.
how I look at it. So
Yeah.
I just want to make that clear because, and I say that. Hi, Vlad. Um, he's a guy from work who listens.
Yeah.
He has a husband.
Yeah.
I want you to understand that, Vlad. I don't think any different of you, and if you wanna have a conversation about this, man, let's have that.
Mm.
We can go for drinks after work or, take an afternoon off at work and just go do something and go down to the coffee shop or something like that.
Hmm.
Look, man, I want you to understand, no bad feelings towards you at all, ever,
Mm.
and I that a lot of this, what I'm talking about is for the Christian inside the Christian context that wants to follow the Bible.
Mhm.
So
Hmm.
I just wanna make that part
Yeah.
clear.
Gets a special shout out. How lucky. um, man, yeah, that's where I was gonna also obviously had questions on, like, regarding the church and whatnot.
Okay, let's hear them.
Um, but just
Oh, you did I jump start another question in your head there?
Of course you did.
Okay.
No. uh, so, so for you, because you'd brought up kinda like where it all kinda started. Well, like, yeah, where it all started
Mhm.
sort of thing. I guess, yeah, no, that does kinda bring up a couple of questions, or as far as, like, so for you,
Go for it.
just because you just have to remind me, because I'm sure I've asked this before, and my brain is great at remembering things.
That
Um
also wasn't recorded, so
Yeah. Um, for you, when did you, I guess, make that, I guess, change as far as, like, being a Christian for you? When in your life did that happen? I guess, but even so, and this is where I'm kinda going, like, so even before, so was that after 6th grade? Where
yes.
Yes, okay, that's what I thought, and then, so from that time beforehand, I guess, I don't know, did you trying to think.
Okay, so I'll let you think here for a second. So,
Right.
okay,
Okay.
so when I became a Christian,
Mhm.
that would have been I would have been 14 at the
Yes.
time.
Okay.
That would have been, I believe, around my 8th or ninth grade year.
Right, so yeah, shortly. Not
It
too
it
long
it would have been
afterwards,
it would
yeah.
have been like 8th grade year,
Mhm.
that time frame. It was June, so it was between school years. My dad had the previous winter undergone brain surgery, um, for cancer, brain cancer, to remove a tumor. He, after the brain surgery, underwent radiation and chemotherapy as well. And for a while, like in May timeframe,
Mhm.
things look good. They're like, "Oh, he's clear. Great.
Mhm.
Awesome." June comes around, 1 month later. Remember, I'm 14, and he gets the "It's back" message. And the one thing that he did say was that he would not do chemo or radiation again because it made him feel horrible, made him feel sick.
Oh. Mhm.
And so that was pretty much the death knell. We knew what was coming. We didn't know how fast. We knew it was coming.
Yep.
And I started asking, what happens after death?
Hmm.
Okay?
Mhm.
Because here I am, 14, being faced with the death of my dad in
Mhm.
front of me. What happens to him when he dies? What's next? It can't be just this blank, eternal, faceless void of nothingness, can it?
Mhm. Right.
Because if so, that's pointless. It's hopeless.
Mhm.
Now, and I think I've told you this. My dad was not, how do I put this? He wasn't a Christian per se. He was very religious.
Mm.
I remember from day one that I can remember, it was a Sunday tradition. You wake up, he made us pancakes, we went to church. When we were down in North Carolina, the church we went to, all I remember is this big white building.
Hmm.
But we always sat like in this back room, far away from the congregation. Didn't really interact with anyone. Didn't do anything. Didn't do like kids' church, Sunday school, nothing like that. We just
Hmm.
walked in, went to there, listened, went home. That's how it was when we moved in to Wisconsin as well. We went to fellowship all that time,
Hmm.
and we would sit in the back, leave. No youth group, no Sunday school. nothing.
Mm,
There was a little bit of time when he was sick that he tried taking us to Sunday school, but that didn't last long. Then obviously he passed away. So again, church had been a big part of my life. We were there every Sunday.
mhm.
It was something we always did. It was a routine. It didn't mean anything.
Yeah, it's just emotion to go through.
It was a motion go to where we got pancakes before we went every Sunday. It
Mhm,
wasn't, it was a part of the trip during the day. It wasn't a destination to go to and learn or do anything. And I remember Pastor Dave was doing actually a sermon on what happens after you die. It was June
hmm,
of that year, 1997. Which date in June specifically, I can't tell you. I just know it was
on a
June
Sunday.
on a Sunday in 1997. How do I know it was 1997? Because I was 14 and my dad would pass away that December. That's kind of burned into my head pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay. But he had that conversation, he had that sermon on what happens when you die. And that's when I guess you could say, I decided I wanted to be saved,
Mm,
but I didn't really start following properly then.
right.
It still took me a
Well,
few years to learn how to follow properly and
mhm,
dealing with all this junk that was building inside of me. I
mhm,
mean, during but in the following years, I mean, depression, suicidal ideation, this thing, SSA, same-sex attraction stuff, all that fighting in me at the same time trying to build community. And I didn't the first time I stepped foot in youth group
mhm.
was after my dad died.
Whoa.
I had never been to youth group before, so I didn't know what was going on. I didn't have connections with any of these people. I remember at my dad's funeral, and I think I don't have confirmation, but I think I know what happened. I think Pastor Dave intervened in this one. These guys, I had no relationship with from youth group. They appeared at my dad's funeral. They're around my age,
Mhm.
and they came up and talked to me.
Mm,
Never talked to them before. One of those guys, Nathaniel Brash, became one of my best friends until he passed away. Like I said, you remind me a lot of him.
I
You really do.
just don't have that glorious beard you had.
Yeah, but you also have hair on your head. You
Yes,
did.
exactly.
Um, so yeah, I never stepped foot in a youth group until after that. And then, you know, here I come in as an outsider and, Nathaniel, he helped a lot
Yeah.
because he tried to include me in things, but me and him weren't really the closest. And it took a while for that to happen, but eventually it did. Okay. But yeah, you asked when, and
So
that's a long answer.
no, yeah.
I
That's
really
awesome.
didn't. I'll be honest. I really didn't get serious about my faith and that
Mhm.
until I was probably like 21, 22, around that age. I was in college and that already.
Mhm.
So it took me a while before I got serious. I played on the edges.
Yeah.
I faked. I played on the team. I wasn't as serious as I should have been, and a lot of that was me, I guess, trying to be self-reliant, to the fact that I wasn't open to any of those people about anything going on.
Well,
No one,
right.
not even not even Nathaniel, never knew about my SSA.
Mm.
He knew about my depression and that.
Mhm.
He came to find out about that later in life, but he didn't know about that part. That part took me a lot longer to start opening up to people about.
Well, there's always such a I mean, there has obviously been such a I guess, you always see bad reactions happening, like, with it when anyone in the church would, I mean, talk about that. It's like you'd always get such a nasty backlash on the whole topic thing where it's like, I mean, yeah, you just if as soon as you were to probably mention it, I mean, it's I guess it's that unknown of who is gonna freak out and just go off on this, and I guess in my eyes also just wrongfully, I guess go off on somebody.
Yeah, there's a big stigma against a
Yes,
lot of
that's
things in the church, okay?
yes, there is.
Let's be honest. But there's also a big stigma against people who deal with this on
Mhm.
a normal basis. Um, I'll be honest, the first time I talked with you or Andy, I wasn't sure how either of you would react.
Yeah,
I wasn't.
right.
And that wasn't because I didn't trust you guys. The only reason I even brought it up was because I trusted
Yeah.
you implicitly. There was no
Mm,
question of the trust, but still, there's that part that goes, "Are they just gonna out of hand reject me?"
yeah. There's that
There
fear.
there's still that fear. Now, I'm part of an online group.
Mhm,
It's an accountability group of other guys in my situation. It is heartbreaking to read the number of guys who talked about this or brought this forward to maybe their church leaders and were immediately dismissed or immediately asked to leave
mm,
or immediately removed from any positions in which they were serving.
mm,
And I want to make this also part crystal clear for anyone who knows me. I didn't leave my previous church because of an issue with that.
mm,
Okay. I did talk to Pastor Dave pretty late
mm.
in the cycle of things,
Yeah,
but there was no like get out of here. There was no like you can't serve anymore. It was all right. How can we help you?
yeah.
How can we keep you going?
Mm.
There wasn't any condemnation. There wasn't any you can't serve anymore. So I think I told you that.
Yes,
Okay, but I just wanna
yes.
make clear for anyone who knows me as well and goes, "Wait, you just changed churches recently. Was this part of
This
it?"
is
No, this wasn't part of the deal
yeah,
at all. There's no hostility there from any of that. It's
mm,
all good. We're that wasn't that wasn't factored into the whole situation at all.
yeah. It's funny because, um, saying as you bring that up, it brings me to a question that I have towards the bottom here, but that was one thing, like, when we had had that conversation. Can't remember how you set up or how you brought it up or whatnot, but it was like the whole thing. I was like, "How do you identify?" Sort of thing.
Yep.
Like, and no, I think I'm pretty sure I said it, but I was like, because you kind of surprised me or took me off guard on how you responded to that. Was the whole thing is I'm a Christian that
Mhm.
has just struggles with this sin and whatnot. Like,
Yeah,
it wasn't
so my exact phrasing was, "I'm a Christian who struggles slightly different."
different. Yes, yes, and I love how it's. I mean, I loved that because it's like for those that just, I mean, think that I mean, we treat it like a taboo kind of subject, but it's like for those that are just like, how can that be sort of thing? I mean, I guess you just look at sin is sin,
Yes, but I also
but
think it's also very distinctly different in this regard.
okay.
Um, okay, so remember what I said, I identify as a Christian who struggles slightly
Diff-
different.
mm,
Okay, I have a slightly different struggle than, you do.
I guess then,
But
right.
the root of it's still the same,
Hmm.
just okay, instead of, like, you might have trouble, like, you're like, "Oh, that woman's in a bikini." I might be like, "Oh, man, that guy's in a Speedo." Okay,
Right.
okay, slightly
Yeah.
different,
It's
but the
yes.
root of it's the same.
It's yeah.
The
It's
root
all
of it is
sin.
still lust,
Hmm. Right.
okay? Whether it's directed at someone of the same gender or not,
Hmm.
it's still lust.
Correct.
Now, obviously, I have to go, "Well, you know what? For me, that's never gonna be in the cards where I can be like, 'Hey, you know what? Let's get to know each other and get married.'" I know that's not in the cards,
Right.
okay? And it took me a long time to get fine with that.
Yeah.
I still struggle with that sometimes, if
Hmm.
I'm being honest, but I'm more so fine than I am a while ago. Like, I've come to accept that.
Yeah.
But where I s and this is why I say that is important because here's the difference. When I say I'm a Christian who struggles slightly different,
Mhm.
I'm not putting my identity in who I'm attracted to. I'm not putting my identity in, all this other thing. I'm putting my identity in Christ.
Right. Correct.
Same as you should be doing, same as anyone
Yeah.
else should be doing that says that they are a Christian. When you have someone in the LGBT community, they put their identity in who they're attracted to for the most part. I'm gonna say for the most part, I'm generalizing some, okay? There are some people who are gonna be like, "No, I don't, blah, blah, blah." Let's have that conversation outside, later, but for the most part, they go, "I'm gay, I'm attracted to men, attracted to women, whatever. Therefore, that is my identity." And with that identity comes these things.
Mm.
You're never gonna see me wearing a rainbow and and marching on the
The
pride
the the
parade.
pride flag thing,
No,
whatever going
you're
down,
never gonna
no.
see me doing that, okay?
Mm.
Because I hold too much to the biblical values.
Mhm.
And that actually and outside of that group that I'm part of online, outside of, the people that know me personally, you know, like if you were to be like, "Oh, look, there's a person over here who's attracting men. You should go over here and join the gay community and do this and that." I would be the pariah because I'd be like, "No, I can't."
Mm.
And they go, "Why not?" "'Cause I'm not gay." And they go, "Well, you're attracted to men." Yeah, you're putting my identity here when it's not. I'm a Christian. I just am tempted different.
Mhm.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
And thankfully, Christians, other guys have been very like, "Okay, I get it. I understand what's going on." You,
Yeah.
Josh, Andy, both Andys,
Yeah. Yeah.
get it,
Yeah.
and that's a thing, but there are people who are outside the church who might not get that, and that's just this weird concept to them that they'll be like, "I I don't understand. Why? How how can you do that? How could you deny?" And this is an argument, like, if you read anything from Matthew Vine or anything like that. Do you know who Matthew Vine is?
Not off the top of my
Okay,
head.
I figured you probably wouldn't. So Matthew Vine is this guy. He went to, I believe it was Harvard. He decided to take a couple years off. Then he came back and he's like, and during that couple of years, he's like, "I'm gonna study, um, what the Bible says about homosexuality." Then he came back a couple of years after, he took this time off and started lecturing and all that stuff, and he goes, "Well, the Bible is fully accepting of gay people and fully accepting of same-sex unions and all this stuff, and
Mm.
there's a lot of things in there that just don't make sense," that he says. We
Mm.
don't we can get into some of that stuff in there if we want to in that, but ultimately, it comes down to him that it's also identity issue. It's not your identity in Christ, it's your identity in who you are attracted to.
Mm.
And I'm like, "Nope,
Hmm.
you're moving down the wrong path here, buddy. If your identity isn't in Christ first, then we have a lot more to discuss, especially if you come under the banner of a Christian."
Right.
Because he's going around saying you can be gay and a Christian and in a same-sex
Mm.
relationship. You know
Mm.
how much I would have loved for that to be true,
Right.
so
Yeah.
much, but I have to say, no, based on how I read the scripture, and yes, based on how you go back and look at some of the old words. When I say the old words, I'm talking the original Hebrew, the original Greek, how it does not affirm that.
Mm. And that's where, and I know we had talked about either, well, before at some point, whereas one of my questions was like, yeah, how do you address those folks uh, that are in the church that are affirming of same sex marriage, relationships, whatever? Because, like, I mean, as I was reading through some, I mean, it was, I don't know, not a good example.
Okay.
I mean, because there was several, like there was. there was, um they had several examples of, like, for scripture and stuff where it talks about, I don't know, some sort of this stuff, but one of the examples, let me see if I can pull it up quick, it's why I don't know why it's going so slow right now, um, but it was talking about how marriage is, like, where it talks about the marriage between Christ and the body being is genderless, so gender shouldn't matter for us as humans for marriage, sort of thing, and, so I was just looking at some of their, like, different examples as to, like, how they justify it, and with that being one of the justifications, I was like, "No."
See, okay, so that justification there, that
Yeah.
that one they're really pulling and
They're
stretching, okay? You
yeah.
know, that those are the same people that say that Christ was transgendered because God doesn't have a gender, therefore Christ doesn't have a gender, and he became aware of his gender at 30 something is what they say. It's a mess of a theological take from their side, in all
Mhm,
honesty. There's no good scriptural support for it. You know,
mhm,
so we have Jesus in the New Testament reaffirming what the idea of marriage is. Marriage is between a man and a woman. He says, as God created them in the garden, man and woman,
mhm,
so a man will leave his family to join with his wife.
mhm.
Okay. You have that. And the people go, oh, no, no, but you're misinterpreting things. And so they keep coming back. So to the what are titled the six clobber passages, if you're familiar with those at all. These are the only 6 verses that directly reference homosexuality in the Bible,
Mm,
okay? Now, I say directly, as in the words around them are in there. There are other passages which reference concepts around this,
mm.
but they come back to these 6 because they go, "Well, if we can defeat these 6 verses, that means we're in the
We're in the
clear on
yeah.
things," okay?
Mhm.
You know, so the first one they come back to is Sodom and Gomorrah, you know, in Genesis. All right. And they go, well, no, it wasn't about homosexuality. It wasn't about anything. It was about them not showing hospitality
Hospitality.
and
Mm,
kindness to strangers. That's what they go, right? And that's what they do. And to be fair, there are other points in the Old Testament which talk about Sodom and Gomorrah not being hospitable. Okay.
mhm,
What they forget is that Jude 7 then comes back and references Jude, part of the New Testament, comes back and references Sodom and Gomorrah and says, just as Sodom and Gomorrah and the surrounding cities, which likewise indulged in sexual immorality and pursued unnatural desire, serve as an example by undergoing a punishment of eternal fire. Okay. So if you want to stick to just Old Testament stuff, then maybe you can get away with some of that.
but when
But
you
then when Jude comes back and brings this and references this, we got an issue because you can't have it both ways. And then people go, well, but Jewish scholars said Sodom and Gomorrah, they're just wicked cities to begin with. Yes, they were wicked cities. This was part of their wickedness.
mhm,
Okay. And then they'll go, well, okay, but the Jews, Jewish culture, you know, and this then starts referencing like stuff in Leviticus about, because, you know, in Leviticus, you have all the laws. Leviticus 18:22, do not have sexual relations with a man as one does with a woman. That is detestable. Interesting. So detestable is an interesting word there. And I think me and you talked about this even before today's session, um, where essentially that's a word in English, or it's also abomination,
mm,
translated in English. Okay.
right.
The word for abomination occurs in Leviticus 6 times. All of them deal with Leviticus 18, dealing with incest, child sacrifice, sexual sins. When it says stuff like eating pork is an abomination, it's using a different Hebrew word.
Hmm,
So,
mhm,
you know, in English, we're reading it as this is an abomination, this is abomination, this is an abomination. And we're like, these are all on the same level. But the Hebrew words are actually different levels. They're different words. We just translate them horribly into English as abomination. And so therefore everything seems to be the same. When the
Right.
Hebrews understand there's a difference. And then you go, well, okay, but all the law was no longer applied because we're New Testament under Jesus. Jesus said he came to complete the law, first off.
Mm,
Second off, there's things in there, afterwards where and I think we've read about this in Acts where all of a sudden Peter has a vision of the food that was unclean, and God says, "I didn't make unclean food."
mhm,
Guess what? That repeals all those, like, cleanliness food things. Also, same stuff about, like, mixed fabrics, same sorta deal. Guess what was never repealed by Jesus ever in the New Testament? Anything regarding the holiness code, stuff like marriage, stuff like homosexuality, stuff like child sacrifice, that sort of stuff.
mm.
And people will go, "Well, you just want what you want." Dude, I would love that if biblically that was allowed,
Right.
okay?
Yeah,
Let's just be
yeah.
honest. Like I said, it's taken me a long time to understand I'm not gonna have a traditional style family. I'm not gonna have a spouse, and I'm not gonna have kids with said spouse, okay? I have a different type of family. My family isn't gonna be the spouse that, whatever. It's gonna be brothers that I'm close to and around, that hold me accountable, and I hold them accountable too on different things because we each struggle with different things. You, Andy, Josh, you guys are my family. The
Mm,
church that I go to is part of my family.
mhm,
I have a different family structure. Would I love for it to be that traditional family? Yes. That's not on the cards for me, and that's taken a while to understand and
mm,
to accept. And some people go, "Well, you're asking that person to be lonely then. You're asking them to be without." There's a difference between being lonely and being single.
mhm.
I can be single and not lonely. I could be married with
And lonely.
20 kids and lonely.
Yeah.
I'm not lonely. I have been at points.
Mhm.
Obviously, the depression of that didn't help, but I'm not now, and I'm single. I and that's where it is, and I got asked this question by, the new pastor, Andy, at the new church I go to.
Mhm,
'Cause I talked to him before I signed up with any teams because I said, "Look, here's where I am, here's why I don't affirm in what I affirm." It's like, "Is it cool if I serve here?"
mhm.
And he's like, "Yeah, that's fine." He goes, "But if you ever get, like, a partner,
It changes things.
of the same gender," he's like, "then we're gonna have a conversation and you're gonna be out." And I'm like, "That's cool, I get it."
Mhm.
And he asked me a question I found very interesting. He was like, "If God ever changed your desires and,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
found a woman, would you marry her?" I'm like, "In a heartbeat."
No. I forget that's right, you did ask that.
You know?
Mhm.
And that's why I was trying to say earlier, I was like, there's some girls, ladies I should probably give an apology to.
And that's I was gonna ask that was a part of, like, way back in my first question was, so, like, obviously having that mindset, um, so did you I was gonna ask, like, yeah, did you ever try and, like, force yourself to change that mindset sort of thing? And, like, as in, like, I had in here, it's like so alright, so did you have or did you try to change it by looking for a relationship with a good old gal? But
That's an interesting way to put it, but
yeah.
yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
I did.
Mm.
And to be honest, that wasn't fair to them. They never knew.
Oh, okay,
They
that was
s
some good would be a
they
follow-up was
yeah,
yeah.
and up until now, they don't know.
Yeah.
That's why I said I probably owe them some apologies.
And that's I gosh, I never really yeah, I never put wait, was lacrosse after that? Like, any relationship no, no. Lacrosse was literally during, right? What
No, lacrosse was
it
before.
was before well, yeah, it was before, but it was, like it was during kind of, like, I the whole, like, I guess, still looking for a relationship kinda thing.
Yeah.
And I guess, yeah, I never even thought about that.
Yeah, so and that's why I said I probably owe them apologies. I I definitely dated women to try to force that perspective change, I guess you could say,
Mhm.
force that attraction change, and just it didn't work.
Mm.
And that being said, I've read stories where that has worked for some people.
Right.
There are actually stories out there if you look. There are guys, and I don't agree you should force it. There are some people who believe that if you're same
Oh.
sex attracted, you should be forced to marry a woman and just go through with it and everything and have children and everything will be all right. That might work for some people and they might be happy. Some are very unhappy and they end up getting divorced because obviously that's not what they want. And so I'm like, I don't want to force that. And I don't want to force another person into that, especially if
Mhm.
they don't know.
Right.
Now,
Fair enough.
if they know and they're like, "Oh yeah, cool, I'm fine with that," then hey, whatever, let's talk. But
Mhm.
in all honesty, that's probably not fair to them because be like, "Hey, look, we're gonna get married." Yeah, I'm not attracted to you. I'd rather look at the guys on the beach. What wife would love that?
Yeah, that's kinda I
"Hey,
dude,
honey,
there's
I don't
some
have eyes for you. I have eyes for the groomsmen." Okay? That doesn't work. Okay?
can see how that kinda makes things a little complicated.
Yeah. Now, there are guys who have done that, and
Mhm.
obviously they say they're being successful with it, and great, I'm glad for them.
Yeah. Yeah.
If that helps out with that, at where I'm at, I just don't think that's the case for me. Were that to ever change, though, whew,
Yeah.
whew,
And that
yes.
yes, okay, so then that yeah, that already answered another one
What
where it's
was the
like
question?
it was like so I was like, "Do you personally hope that someday you could have a change in mind from"
Dude,
Yeah.
I have been asking that from God
Yeah.
since I was a teenager.
Yeah. Mm.
And, people always go, "Well, you just have to have enough faith to ask," this.
Right.
Okay, fine. But if that's what you think, cool. I've asked for many
It's
years and,
Mhm.
they always go, God will always answer the prayer. Sometimes
Mm,
it's no.
right, you might not
And you
get
know
the
what?
answer you want.
Right now, the answer is no.
Mhm.
I look to things like, in a weird way, my namesake in some regards, um, Paul from the Bible. We don't know what the thorn in his flesh was. It's
Mm.
never, some people speculate that, a myriad of things, and you can
Mhm.
speculate things all you want. That's fine until we know it. We don't know. And he always says, I have that, he goes, I asked for this thorn to be removed, multiple times essentially, and never has, but it's going to stay here now for the glory, for God to be glorified essentially through this.
Mhm.
And that's kind of where I've landed at
Mm.
is I'm not, I would love for this to be
Yeah,
just purged out.
gone.
Will it happen? I would love it to, but realistically, I'm turning 40 at the end of this month.
Man, it's
It's
already
been
May.
it's 20 plus years of this.
Mhm.
I don't see that happening.
Right.
But if it happened, whew, ooh, 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 yeah, I'm jumping at the opportunity.
Yeah. And I guess, yeah, to follow up with it was because yeah, like, is there anything I guess, obviously, besides, like, praying and stuff, I guess I don't know. Was there anything that you ever, like, looked into as far as, like, having some sort of, I guess, in a sense, you could say help with it? And then obviously, like, as familiar, like, trying to be in a relationship with a woman and stuff like that, yeah, I see how that's, like, trying to be like, "Hey, like, ah," but
Yeah.
it's just not happening. I guess, yeah, I wasn't sure if there's any other, like, sort of
I mean,
things to do or
there
whatnot, but
used to be a lot in this space of, what they call like conversion therapy sort of thing is what they called it, right?
yes, yeah, that's right.
There was there's a lot of issues with some of that.
Mhm,
I said some, not all of it.
mhm,
Um, some of them, how they ran them, just horrible.
for
honestly. It was
sure.
like electroshock therapy combined with, like, straight porn. So it's
See,
and then, like, if
okay.
you ever saw gay porn, they would, they would then shock you, so it kinda gets you out.
It's trying to, yeah, burn that image in your brain and bad this good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but they would actually use straight porn as part of it. That's not always a good
No.
thing, right? There was also a lot of people who in a lot of these, conversion therapies, whatever, would be told that because they were attracted to someone of the same sex or same gender, that they were, basically trash. They ended up hating themselves, causing depression in them, causing suicide. So how that works wasn't always the best. Okay.
Mhm.
That's why it's being outlawed. Well, there's multiple reasons why it's being outlawed in many states. Beyond that, plus it also goes against the narrative currently of, you know, of yeah, of June, essentially, let's say.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So have I looked at it? Yeah, but at the same time, I also understand the potential downfalls of it, you know, and I also go, "Eh." Now there are people who go, yeah, you just just pray it away, just do this. And oh man, those people, I want to strangle you with love and tell you
Yeah.
if I could just pray this away, man, it would have been gone in my
Yeah, it'd been
early
gone.
30s.
Right.
Because, oh man, and the amount of time like I would just hide it from people, just like it took me forever to tell you
Mhm.
and Andy and Josh and that. I recently told our former youth pastor, or your former youth pastor,
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
because he was never a youth pastor when I was in youth group,
Right.
but I worked with him as a youth leader,
Mhm.
Toby, and I talked with him about it, and yeah, that was a very interesting conversation.
Yeah.
But ultimately, in the end, he goes, man, I first off, he was like, thank you for telling me, and then he's like, it's like I goes, I can't even understand how this would be. Not as like how this happened, but
No.
like how difficult that could be to deal with and
Hold on to
process.
that and
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, there are times, like, especially late 20s or 30s, I'm seeing all these people I know all of a sudden coupling up and getting married and that, and I'm like, "This
yep.
would this would be great."
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting, like, being in that wedding and baby season for yeah. I guess in my life with all my friends left, well, no, I shouldn't say all my friends, but, like, several friends, just like, "Oh, get married. Oh, you're expecting already. Oh, oh, okay. You just hitched up. Oh, okay.
Yep.
Here sit I. Yeah, oh."
Yeah.
It's alright. It's alright, though. I don't mind it
Look, man,
so far.
where you eventually get married or you stay single for
Yeah.
whatever reason,
Mhm.
which is your own reason to be single or get married. The fundamental thing is not to put your identity in if you have a relationship or not with another person, it's put your relationship in Christ.
Mhm. He's our yeah, he should be our identity. Wow, I couldn't get
Yeah.
that word out.
And Paul does say in the scriptures that those who are single don't have to worry about a lot of things. They can spend more time serving the church. And I
Precisely.
I try to take. Of that as well.
Mhm.
I'm involved in the soundboard team now. We'll be involved in live streaming once we get that all kind of figured out.
Mhm.
Involved with the youth group, and all this stuff. I've already had one kid be like,
Oh gosh.
he's like, because I'm newer, so he's still asking the
Being
questions,
a jerk.
no, he's not being a jerk. He's trying to get to know me. He's like, "You married? No. You have kids? No. Why not? You're old." And I just sat there and I was like,
Dude, if you only knew.
and he asked this like
Yeah.
they have this thing in the youth group called family time, so it's like a couple minutes.
Okay.
I was like, "Dude, there is not enough time right now to explain everything."
Yeah.
I was
No,
like, "This would
not
be a
really.
long conversation," and I was like, "I'm still new to this youth group, so,
It's not happening.
yeah, I didn't say the what I really wanted to say was, I don't feel comfortable having this conversation with you yet."
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
it's still the like you said, it's still that stigma out there. It's still that
Right.
thing. Like I said, I know a bunch of guys who got removed from positions or asked to leave their churches and all that just because they finally admitted to someone that they were struggling with this issue. They felt devastated afterwards, and I don't blame them.
No,
And
I don't either.
they felt torn up. They didn't know what to do. They already felt less than, and then they're being asked to step down and leave, and it's hurtful, and the church is I don't know if the church is handling it properly yet. Thankfully, the 2 I've been involved with this is
Mhm.
handling it at a decent pace. They're handling it properly, they're addressing it properly, but the church as a whole seems to be struggling. Part of that is there's a lot of churches right now that are very gay affirming, gay marriage affirming in that. There was a guy I went, to college with, his wife him and his wife separated, okay? She is now a pastor at a church in Pennsylvania with
Mm,
her wife,
mm.
very and they went to Cornerstone with me at the same time. There's a bunch of guys that I shouldn't say a bunch, there's a couple guys I know that Cornerstone at the same time. I there's that kind of old joke, the gaydar sorta deal, okay? I
I
kinda
haven't heard
pick
that in a long time.
I know. I kinda picked up the 2 of them right away. Like, I was like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah." My suspicions turned out right.
Yeah.
Yep.
Nice.
I should ask them if I ever tripped up there.
There you guys caught my radar, but yeah.
Yeah. And so it's
Mm.
definitely one of those interesting things to see over time, those who I went to school with and that, and then they're now very pro LGBT, they're very pro gay, they're very pro all this, and I'm sitting over in the corner going, "I I can't be. I read the scriptures, and the scriptures do not tell me that this is okay."
Mm.
They go, "Oh, you're misreading."
Mm.
Tell me where, because
Right. Yeah, show me.
I would like to learn. "Oh, yeah, First Corinthians." "No, sorry, Paul was pretty clear." "Well, that's because we don't know how it's translated." "Yeah, we do know how these words are translated, sorry. Just we would like them to be translated a different way
Oh, we
or try
want
to add a little more cultural context to make it acceptable to do what we wanna do."
mm,
Trust me, that'd be so easy to do.
right.
Again, Christopher Yuan, if you haven't listened to a lot of his stuff, he talks about it's kind of the same thing in his book, Out of a Far Country. It's a book co-written between him and his mom. Like they trade off chapters. One writes one chapter, one writes the other chapter, each from their perspective. And he talks about his time in jail when he just came to Christ. Gay guy living. I think by that point he had been diagnosed with AIDS. Um, he had been arrested for drug charges. He was selling drugs. It's a good story, go read it. But eventually in jail, he found Christ, and he went to the chaplain there, and he's like, "Look," he's like, "I'm I'm gay, I'm a Christian, da, da, da," and the chaplain gave him a book and said, "See, you can be gay and a Christian and have, like, a same-sex partner."
Oh,
Yeah, and Yuan, he's like, he says in his book, I'm paraphrasing, but basically he read through that book that he was given, and he goes, "No, they're mutilating scripture," gave it back to chaplain, said, "No," and said, "I'm gonna go by what the Bible says."
oof.
Yeah,
He didn't like that.
and after he got out of jail, with the help of his parents and that, he actually went to Moody, became a student, and then taught for a while, and now he goes around talking about Christians, same-sex attraction, and gay community and all that. He has a lot of interviews out there, so Christopher Yuan, good guy, definitely recommend this
Checking him
checking
out.
him out. He has a lot of good stuff to say. And, he's walked through a lot of this, further than I have. He
Mm,
actually has had multiple boyfriends and sex partners and that. And so
mm,
he came out of not that trying to compare or anything here,
mhm.
but he came out of a bigger pit, so to speak.
Right.
You
Yeah, yeah,
know,
yeah.
he came from a deeper depths of despair to where he is now and can talk about this and says this. Just like they say, I don't know if you've I know you know this because we've talked about this. There's a side A, B, X, and Y Christianity.
Yeah, so you asked me which was like, just from reading it, which one do you think I am?
Uh
I don't remember which one that was, but I remember guessing the right one.
huh. Thank you for joining us on this week's episode of Use the Words Podcast. Yeah, that was just part one of the conversation that we had. So join us next week for part two. And Aaron ends the episode in part two the only way that Aaron can.